Okay, let's take a look at all the different ways you can select marchers. First, of course, you can click individual marchers, and also click and drag to select a group, and click anywhere on the field to clear the selection. You can also add marchers to a selection by holding down the Control key. So if I click here and I hold down the Control key while I click these marchers, it will add each one to the selection. A quicker way of selecting curves in particular is with Control drag. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to Control click this marcher, but I'm going to hold the mouse button down. And while I'm doing that, I'm just going to wave the mouse pointer along the form to select all the marchers. You can also use shift click to make it easier to select straight lines. So for instance, if I click this marcher here, and if I shift click the endpoint, it'll select the straight line. And if I keep using shift click, it'll keep adding lines to the selection. You can combine shift click with control click. For instance, if I wanted to select every other line in this block. So first I'll do shift click, and then I'll use control click to skip a line, and then shift click, control click to skip a line, and then shift click again. You can also use double click to select sections as a group. So for instance, if I double click a brass member, it'll select the entire block. And the same goes for the guard members here. Now if I change half of the block into a different instrument using the E key, let's say I change them to contras, these count as separate groups when I double click them. And the same thing happens if I change their pose using the A key. So if I change it to horns down, these are two separate groups when I double click. You can also use Control double click to add and remove groups from the selection. There's also a feature called Quick Select, which lets you bring back selections that you had earlier. So for instance, if I go ahead and I select this square again using Shift click, and let's say I scale it out a little bit, and I lose the selection because I'm going to go and I'm going to work with some other marchers here. I'm going to make this into a little diamond in between. But then let's say I decide that I want this outer square to turn into a circle. Well, instead of having to use shift click again to reselect everything, I can hold down the Q key and hover over it. And you can see that it already knows that this is a group of marchers. So while I'm holding down Q, I'm just going to click and it'll reselect them. So I can bring them into that circle that I wanted. You can also use Control A at any time to select all of the marchers on the field. Sometimes that's useful if you want to use the arrow keys to reposition the entire set. The last thing I want to show you is something called Split Select. Now let's say I want to select every other guard member in this form. Normally what you would do is use Control click to select each one. But in this case, what you can do is use Control click and drag to select the entire form in order, and then press the % key, which is the 5 key, and that will select every other marcher. So there you go. I hope that was helpful, and thanks for watching.